Merry Christmas, everyone, and happy fourth night of Hanukkah. I'm here with my dad. He's rocking a pretty cool Hanukkah sweater. Come on, baby, light my menorah. All right, so we're out here in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I figured with so many people on podcasts and interviews, interviewing people that they feel are experts in certain topics, I asked my dad, I said, can I get you on an interview? Because you have a lot that you've helped me with and taught me how to do and inspired me to, be who I am. And so he always has some great quotes. He's helped us tremendously in our clinic. And so I just felt like it'd be fun to sit down and have an interview and talk about it. All right.
Thank you. I hope I'm not disappointing.
Okay. I don't think it'd be disappointing. And just a quick little backstory. And it's kind of hard to see here, sitting to see the full capabilities of my dad here, but he's not the typical 81-year-old. He goes for walks every single day. Everyone thinks he's maybe early 70s at oldest. He just recently had some things that happened with 2 brain surgeries this year, which was really the first health issue you've had
In a long time.
in a long time. And it was very scary for our family. But he recovered very quickly. He was in the ICU, and everyone didn't believe that he was 81 years old. I think you were 80 at that point,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, but he recovered great, bounced back great, and something that my dad has always done, which has been really cool as a chiropractic son, is that he actually listens to my advice. I moved out to Idaho. I used to practice here in Albuquerque. My mom and dad would come in and get checked and adjusted by me. And a good buddy of mine, Dr. Tony Delangel, who took over the clinics out here, he's been so kind to take care of my parents in my absence. So my mom and dad go and see him, you see him every 3 weeks now.
Yeah, once every 3 weeks.
But for a long time, you were seeing him every 2 weeks.
Correct.
And he would get checked in the absence of symptoms. Go figure. And how come you would do that?
Because I thought it contributed to my overall health, and I think it does.
Yep, and it does. And my dad supplements. He asks me questions about things. He doesn't. You take 0 prescription medications, right?
Right now, 0, yes.
0. And he's only saying right now because after the brain stuff, he had to take some stuff temporarily. And this is also a Facebook Live in celebration of a clear MRI study that shows that hopefully you're out of this medical model.
Yep, it looks that way. I think I'm clean at this point.
Cool. And so I was joking with my dad, but somewhat serious. I said, at 81 years old, let's at least set some goals for the next 19 years to get you to 100, and then we can set some new goals from that point going forward, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to start off with a quote that I thought this guy, Bill Oncken, actually said it as eloquently as my dad said it, but when you looked it up, you found the original quote that Bill Oncken said, and I like your quote better. And part of what inspired this, I was listening to a podcast yesterday of my buddy, Dr. Chad Woolner, and he was mentioning a quote from a famous actress who got a whole lot done, and she had a reiteration of this quote too, of the difference between an amateur and a professional. Out of all of them, I know I'm biased, but I like your quote the best, okay?
Yeah, little background. Bill Oncken was a management consultant. He lectured, he gave 2-day seminars to a variety of companies. I first heard him when I was a manager at Target stores in Minneapolis. I joined Target when Target was going from store 11 to store 12, so it was very early in Target's history. And Target was a company that was built on the thesis that you can professionally manage a retail organization, which was a stretch because most retail organizations were not professionally managed. But they brought Bill Oncken in to do a seminar. And what Bill Oncken would do during the course of his lecture, he'd say, here's a pearl, and pencils ready. And
Write that down.
Yeah, pencils ready and pads ready, write it down. And he got people in the seminar to write down his pearls. And one of his first pearls was, and I'm probably misquoting it.
Well, I have it right here. I wrote it down.
Oh, okay, yeah. The amateur can learn to do anything he likes to do. The professional can learn to like to do that which must be done, which stuck with me because I think that was very important. And his point was that managers do things that are unnatural. The natural thing to do if you want to get something done is to do it yourself. What a manager has to do is find a subordinate that he can delegate that task to and then make sure the subordinate does it. So that was one of the unnatural things that Oncken pointed out that a manager has to do. The variation of that I've used, and I change it, I guess, every time I say it, is the amateur does well that which he likes to do. The professional learns to do that which must be done. And what it essentially says is, just because you don't like to do something, if you're going to be a professional in your job, you're going to be a professional manager, you have to learn to like to do that which has to be done.
And so this, obviously, doing this inside of Move Now University for all of our chiropractors who are part of our group or the ones that follow us, this is relevant in our clinics. This is relevant because us as chiropractors, a lot of us are business owners. We have staff that we manage ourselves. We have an office manager that we help train and inspire to manage, but ultimately we are usually at the top and running our business. And a lot of us just wanted to be a chiropractor. We didn't want to do all this management stuff. And I personally didn't really want to do any of this at all. And I'm grateful that I could turn to my dad every time I had questions with this, because he's had a lot of experience doing this in multiple jobs as far as managing people and doing it successfully and being able to be transparent with people and let them know what they're doing well, what they're not doing well. I think you did probably a pretty good job, it sounds like, in your career of not hurting too many people's feelings.
No, I think that's true.
Right.
There were cases where I had to fire people, and that's always very difficult. I never enjoyed that. I always tried to make people successful at the jobs they were doing and was able to do that most of the time. But every once in a while, you're going to get a situation where that just plain doesn't work. I always tried to be sensitive to people's feelings because you're dealing with real live human beings, and you have to value them, and that's an important thing to keep in mind.
Gotcha. So a couple things that my dad has helped us do in our clinic that I think is really important for you to do in your clinic, which we did not have done until we created this. And a lot of this, I was fortunate enough that my dad retired, let's see, back when you were how old?
I retired when I was the first time I retired was when I was about 67. I was working for a subprime mortgage company in California. Then we moved to Albuquerque, and I did some part-time work for a couple of companies doing management consulting and training after that time. And then finally I retired for real. I don't remember the year anymore, but it had to be at least 8 or 9 years ago.
Okay, and then you went to triple full-time work when you then started helping me when we opened our clinic back in 2014.
Yeah, what I told people is I'm retired, working full-time, and not getting paid for it. It was a hell of a deal.
Right, it's awesome. And so things that we had to develop in our clinic that I know a lot of seasoned chiropractors don't have in their clinic even after 20 years in practice, which makes life a lot harder, is things like a staff procedure manual. Okay, so we had...
One of the first things that I put together was a staff manual with essentially procedures and policies to follow within the clinic, what employees are expected to do, how the clinic works, time off, pay reviews, that kind of stuff. Then Todd wanted to put together a procedure manual because he had procedures in the clinic that he wanted to document, so I helped with that. We put together a separate clinic procedures manual. Then we got notice that, or we became aware that HIPAA was an issue, and we bought the prototype of a HIPAA manual, which I don't think was very good, but we used that as a starter and put together a HIPAA manual for the clinic. So now we have a HIPAA procedures manual, and the three together have been useful in terms of documenting what it is that we do in the clinic, what it is the employees are expected to do, a place where you can go to find forms and things of that sort.
So from there, that level of organization, to be honest, I've never had, and I've aspired to have, but I'm not the same exact personality type as my dad. I have a lot in common with my dad for sure, but he's more organized than I am. I think I'm more of the creative maybe, and he's
That's
more
true.
of the analytical. And so it works really well because he can help us look at stats and get things organized and help maybe direct me sometimes if I'm going somewhere where I need to handle A and B before I get to C and make sure that I do that. So I'm not just functioning out of excitement and emotion, but really out of practicality. And so he helps pull back the reins a little bit on me and has over the years to get my head back in gear so I can do things in the right order. But inside of Move Now University, what we ended up building, and again, that wasn't something that we ever planned on doing. Like all of these procedures and all the work and all the stuff that I've done and all the stuff that my dad's helped us with, all the behind the scenes stuff that most people never even hear about, that was something that I had always wanted to guard and hold very close and not want to share with anyone. And again, I mentioned earlier, a good buddy of mine, Dr. Chad Woolner, who started a thing called Chiro Funnel Secrets, and he started teaching chiropractors all these different marketing tactics and things, and he shared it so openly. When I saw him doing that and I saw what he was building, and he was building this camaraderie with other chiropractors and helping them tremendously and really just getting such satisfaction out of helping all these other clinics help their communities and help more patients, that's what sparked it in me to say, that's what I need to do with these systems that we're doing in our practice. And Chad told me this. He said, you have to give so much that it hurts. Meaning all the stuff that you say, well, I'm going to give this, but surely I'm not going to give this part because that took us like a year to make. There's no way I'm just going to give that or include it inside of our program that we charge a fraction of what you could actually pay for it because it's like a business plan, everything, every little single step I think we have documented for the most part. But he's the one who inspired me to, I guess, put my guard down and start sharing this stuff. And so that's what we started doing almost 3 years ago. Whoops, hold on one second. Our tripod just fell. Okay, technical difficulties. All right, cool, we're back. All right, so anyway, so that's what we did. That was our first technical difficulty. That's not too bad. Okay, so that's what we did about 3 years ago, started doing that, and it's just grown and built since then. Where was I going with this? So a lot of the behind the scenes stuff is the stuff that my dad and I did, and a lot of the projects that my dad would do where he would just work endlessly. I'd have to tell him not to stay up so late. He'd stay up till, what, like 2 in the morning?
Yeah, typically.
He'd stay up till 2 in the morning, and then...
I don't do that anymore.
No, and then he would sleep in till like 10 or 11, so I'd always tell my staff and office manager not to reach out to my dad if it was before 11 a.m. because typically he'd be up working until like 2. But anyway, so a lot of that foundation has been built. And fortunately, it's been built, it works, it's been refined, and so it doesn't have to be recreated. So a lot of the heavy lifting that needed to be done has already been done. And so there's a lot less involvement that my dad does now, mostly because I'm trying to keep him from doing it because of all the stuff he went through this year. But I always welcome you coming back in to do whatever you want to do.
Yeah, the thing to keep in mind is that the creative part of what's going on in the clinic and what's featured in MoveWell University is all Todd. I helped with some of the systemization and documentation, but he's the one who figured out what had to be done, certainly in terms of chiropractic care. He knows about it, I don't. So all that creative stuff is his work, and I function mostly in a support role.
Gotcha. Well, thanks. Yeah, and so main thing, I guess, from this really non-structured interview that I just grabbed my dad and said, let's go do an interview and start talking, is main things that I feel like are important to have in your clinic that have helped us tremendously, and we actually need to do some updates on these things, but we still reference it all the time, is a clinic procedure manual, staff procedure manual, and a HIPAA manual. And those 3 things are extremely, extremely important. The HIPAA part is not one that you like to do or is fun to do. It's one that you have to do because if you get tagged with something, you have huge fines. It's ridiculous. But so let's not talk about that one. And on a side note, I'll just reference that if you need help with that or guidance with that, the person who's taken that over for us now that we work with is Dr. Perry Barnhill from Fearless Chiropractor. He helps, and he's available for all of our Move Now chiropractors. And that's that. That's all I'm going to say about the HIPAA side. On the staff procedure manual and the clinic procedure manual, right? The staff procedure manual, clinic, right? I'm calling it the right thing, right? Okay. Those 2 documents, our staff procedure, clinic procedure manual are both over 100 pages. And it took upwards of at least 6 months, I think, to build each one of them.
Yeah, they've been evolving over time. As we find that there were deficiencies in the first iteration, we improve them and try to remove the deficiencies. So these things have developed over a period of time. There's also, parenthetically, some logs that we keep on a regular basis to log performance. And those also have improved over a period of time to the point now where I think they're pretty good. And it gives us a snapshot of clinic performance on a day-by-day and month-by-month basis.
Yeah. And so a couple of those pretty elaborate spreadsheets are, and I talk about this inside of our training videos inside of Move Now University when I'm showing some kind of spreadsheet that auto calculates things like how to map out your schedule. Like there's a whole section we have about scheduling. So when you're adding a corrective exercise functional movement department in your practice and you're doing adjustment only, you have to figure out how you're going to schedule these patients, how many people are going to be in your clinic at any given time, where you're going to have these different choke points of too many patients in the clinic and not enough staff. So you have to adjust your schedule accordingly so that you don't overbook. How are you going to put special appointments in? How are you going to do this when you have multiple doctors? That spreadsheet, for example, amongst almost all of them, were developed by this guy over here. And so I would talk to my dad, I would tell him what we're trying to do, and then 12 hours later, he would say, okay, here's the 5th version of the spreadsheet. We'd look at it, find some things that didn't work. He'd go back to the drawing board, fix it up some more, and then finally it was a workable version. And that's something that we have inside of Move Now University, which I'm not sure if I ever told you, but some of the spreadsheets that you've put together, since they become such a big system in the clinic, we did training videos on them, and we share some of those inside of Move Now University. So we have other chiropractors using the spreadsheets
Didn't realize that.
Yes. So, and
but in developing those spreadsheets, the thing to keep in mind is that we failed to make them perfect. We started using them and figured out what had to be improved as we went along. So it evolved over a period of time. What you're seeing is the final result, but it took a while to develop it.
Yep, and that's the same with every single form that's been created. A lot of the forms and things were created by me, or we actually had a previous chiropractor who was in the clinic with us years and years ago that was really good at helping us with some forms. So he and I sat down, did a lot of work with that. Some of those had input from my dad as well. But the forms, the paperwork, all of that stuff, and I talk about in the training, it's usually the 20th or 30th version that you're seeing because it's been refined, and we've tested it to make sure that it works in everyday practice. But again, just to repeat, things that are very important to have in your practice is figure out a clinic procedure manual, every procedure that you do. And if you follow stuff inside of Move Now University, and if you're using our procedures for day 1, day 2, day 3, 4, 5, then you have it in video format. And that's what you use to train your staff. That's what you use to reference back to as far as every little step of what you do. There's elaborate flow charts that I've built inside of a program called Lucid Charts, which works really well, where you can make little squares and triangles and lines, showing sequences. That's what we've mapped out from day 1 through 5, and then the first 25 visits of corrective care, and then the next 12 months of care with a patient. All of that stuff's mapped out. That's stuff that that I've created. It's inside of there, and it really helps you understand what needs to be trained and understood to execute these systems. Putting that into a manual is a good idea. That's one thing. A second thing is the clinic staff manual, as far as setting up all the different rules and regulations and things in your clinic so your team knows what to expect. But these other things, as far as stats and things, that's something that we haven't even talked about yet. There's a spreadsheet that my dad made as far as tracking clinic stats. And these stats look at how many patients were seen on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Then it looks at the next 30 days out from each one of those days. And what it's trying to do is predict when numbers are starting to move a certain direction so you can take action before it's a problem, before you realize that patient count is down and collections are down and now it's time to scramble. You start to understand the trends and you can predict where there's going to be a problem a month ahead of time, and you can start taking action well ahead of time.
Yeah, one of the first, well, one of the first management jobs I had the good fortune of working with some financial analysts that came out of Ford Motor Company, who were very good at what they did. And one of the points that they made is that in those days, and this was in the 70s and 80s, a traditional financial controller had his hat on backwards, looked backwards at what the past results were, and was kind of backing into the future. What a financial analyst did is he used the numbers from the business and tried to predict the future instead of back into it. And that was one of the things that I tried to do in creating that the statistic sheet that Todd is talking about. You have to use existing data on what you're doing in your clinic to know what your performance has been, but you use that to predict what's likely to happen in the future. And if what's likely to happen in the future is not what you want it to be, you got to change something. And the only way you can change it is by measuring what's going on right now, and using that as the basis for prognosticating what will happen in the future. If you like it, that's fine. If you don't like it, you better change something.
And that whole concept transitions into one of my favorite quotes that we talk about inside of our program of what gets measured gets managed.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And then another...
That was also another Oncken quote.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that was his quote.
Yeah.
There we go. See, I've been quoting Bill Oncken, and I didn't even know all this time. So then another stat that we keep as well that I'll just talk about is we also have a new patient tracking sheet. And that was a sheet that you designed where we could look at conversions. So you could see if someone came in, like in a certain month, if you had 30 new patients, how many of them made it to day 2, how many made it to day 3, which is a financial, how many made it past day 3, how many started care. And then it was really nice because then at a glance, you could see where these patients were progressing through nicely or where they fell off. So you could take action steps along the way to not just lose them, but make a phone call, reach out to them, find out why they didn't get past day 3, if there was an objection that wasn't handled, and so on and so forth. Anything to say about that?
No, I think you covered it. That's important. It's important to bring new patients into the practice, but it's most important to keep those patients in the practice doing what they should be doing to improve their health.
Yep, absolutely. And that's a thing that we have reiterated time and time again in past podcasts and Facebook Lives and inside of our program, is that all of the systems that we've built are to support this tremendous amount of value that you can give to a patient so that you can change the whole outlook of their entire life by following these systems, by jumping into the 12-week transformation, by having these resources to use to prevent a problem or get them out of a crisis if they have a crisis. And that's not the traditional approach that you'll see in healthcare or in chiropractic. It's usually a very short-term type of thing, or if it is a long-term, preventative healthcare type thing, I'll put that in quotes, or maintenance care in quotes. It's pretty much maintenance care of come in and get adjusted every month for the rest of your life, but there's not a whole lot of substance that supplements that process so that the patient can reference it if needed. That's what we built inside of Move Now University. We built this thing called the 12-week transformation. When your patients become a patient with you, they have access to this portal. They have things they can learn about You Are What You Eat weekly secrets, things to avoid in diet, things to add to diet, as far as a corrective exercise library, understanding the joint by joint approach as far as what joints should be mobile, stable, understanding this whole process of why muscles get tight, why you have pain, what are the most common dysfunctional movement patterns, how to overcome that, ultimately getting people inspired to exercise, to be healthier, and where chiropractic fits in there, understanding segment, posture, movement. This is all this big educational process that we're trying to unleash onto the public, and people welcome this with arms wide open. There's so many doctors I've talked to who haven't gone down this road, and I think when they hear it, they think people aren't going to want this. It seems too complicated. It seems daunting, but people don't have time. People are so busy, and we're living in this time period right now where, time. People don't have time. Well, I've said this before and I'll say it again. Patients want to live a fulfilled life. They want to be healthy. That's really what they want. Don't sell them short and think they just want to get out of back pain. They want to get out of back pain because it's impacting their life. They want to have the security knowing that they're not going to have these struggles as they progress in age. And if you can show them how to live a fulfilled, empowered life, that's what they want more than anything. And like a small example of this, which I don't know if you have that sheet in front of you that you printed out with the exercises on it. Is that in the other room?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So something that just happened a week ago with my dad, for example, he's living in New Mexico. I'm in Idaho. And he mentions to me on the phone that he's starting to have some kind of pain in his hip, right? Why don't you share what was going on with that?
Yeah, what happened is we bought a new Ford Escape a couple of years ago, and I always thought the seat in there was very comfortable, but getting in and out of the Escape was just excruciating. It was terrible. My back was hurting, getting in and getting out. We had a chiropractic appointment with Tony DelAngel, and Tony did an examination of my back as he usually does, and he said, "You're not having an alignment problem, you're having a muscle problem." So I told Todd about that, and Todd said, "Yeah, I trust Tony's judgment as to what the source of the problem is." He said, "I think it's a particular muscle, and let me show you some exercises to do so you can get some relief." So we went to the video library. He identified 3 exercises that I should do.
So I'm just going to interrupt real quick. So what I did is my dad has a login to the 12-week transformation. So he went into our 12-week transformation that we give to our patients in Idaho. My dad's in New Mexico. So he logs in, and I'm walking him through what to look for, and he's making notes.
Yeah, so he told me the 3 exercises to do. I did some screenshots of some of those exercises to remind me of what position I should be in. There was one that I did laying down on my back, one that I did seated, one that I did laying down on my stomach, and I wanted to make sure I was in the correct position. So I made some screenshots, put it on a Word document, and I used that, and 3 days later, the pain was gone. It was terrific.
And so in going through the process of talking with my dad, I was explaining to him, and I'll just share this real quick with you. This is like a really common dysfunctional movement pattern, and I was just giving my dad a hard time because he's telling me that he's buying shorter pants now because his pants don't stay up. And I said, that's because you have atrophy of your glutes, which is called glute amnesia. It means that your butt forgot. Okay, so basically at 81 years old, he's walking, he's doing all these activities, but he's not doing enough stuff for glute activation or at least maintaining glute muscle mass. So what's happening is when he's walking, all those deep hip stabilizing muscles, common muscle like the piriformis, now the piriformis is trying to take over to attempt to do some leg extension and external rotation instead of his glute doing this. So what happens? The piriformis is ticked off. He's got some discomfort, some pain in there. He's having, some pretty significant deep hip pain. And so what we went through was a process of toning down the overactive synergist, which is the piriformis. It's the muscle that's trying to do the joint action, but it's not the main mover. The glute max and glute med are the main movers as far as hip extension and hip external rotation. So what do? We say, let's tone down piriformis first. So I showed him some things to do with global mobility, like a foam roller. I said you could try it with a double lacrosse ball. If it's not too uncomfortable, let's just start with a foam roller. Then let's get into a little bit of a stretch. Then we'll get into activating the prime mover. So do some glute max activation exercises. So a very simple approach. I just chose 3 exercises. Helped him. Now on this trip, I said, okay, now let's take it to the next level. Now let's go on the opposing joint action muscles, which is the hip flexors, make sure those are not overactive. Okay, so I'm going to take them through. I'll do some tests on them, very basic stuff inside of our MoveWall 3 functional movement assessment. You can do like a Thomas test, and you could find out what other hip flexors are problematic. Give some global and target mobility exercise using a foam roller, double lacrosse ball, J cane. He has all this stuff in his bedroom in a big basket. Okay, and so I'm going to show him how to do it. He'll do that. He'll do some stretching of the anterior musculature in the hip flexors. We'll identify what hip flexors really need it. He'll do the rest of the stuff. And then ultimately what I'm going to show him is banded deadlifts. And why banded deadlifts? Because he needs to do a full body movement, functional movement exercise, not just the thing that got you out of the pain, but the thing that's going to build and maintain glute strength is doing a bigger movement like a deadlift. And I believe I've shown you things like this before, but I'm going to show you how to do it with a band, okay? Which it's all stuff that you have. Ultimately, it would be cool if my dad was doing kettlebell exercises. He has a 10-pound kettlebell in his room, but ultimately for glute activation, 10 pounds is not heavy enough, even for your level right now. It's just not heavy enough. But you can simulate that with bands. You can build quite a bit of resistance with that, and I'll teach you how to hip hinge properly. I'll reinforce that. I've taught you that before. But it's the fact that I could have my dad go online in the 12-week transformation, references stuff, and do it a couple states away was pretty cool. He already had everything chiropractically handled. You know, he's under great care, so he's got a fellow chiropractor that I practiced with for several years, checking my dad, telling him, okay, it's not a joint issue with this, and that guy actually does quite a bit of functional movement as well. But you know, he gave some brief recommendations. I went a little deeper. I think I'm going to be meeting up with Dr. Tony, I think tomorrow. So I'll share that with him too. I'll show him the 12-week transformation. Maybe if you're watching this, Dr. Tony, maybe I'll get you on board with the 12-week transformation too out here in Albuquerque. Anyway, so I think this interview has gone full circle. Just in summary, the quote that I'm going to quote my dad on this, even though it's a Bill Oncken reiteration, this quote is going to live in infamy. The amateur does well that which he likes to do. This is the difference between the amateur and professional. The amateur does well that which he likes to do. The professional learns to like to do that which must be done. I think it's important that says learns to like to do. So doesn't fake it, but actually learns to like to do because you know that it must be done to be successful. And that's what you as the chiropractor needs to do, is if it's a marketing thing, if it's a patient education thing, if it's launching your 12-week transformation, if you are a member of Move Now University and you haven't pushed forward and done it because it's uncomfortable doing the training and having to, allocate that time in your shift, get uncomfortable. 2020 is coming up pretty soon. Your community, your patients, everyone counts on you to do this. And the way you're going to do it, like we've spelled this out so clearly, we built a 12-week implementation manual for you and your team to go through. Have I showed that to you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it took like 6 weeks to go through and build that thing. And I built that because I was trying to eliminate all the variables of, well, Dr. Todd, you put together this great program of all these videos, but how do we navigate through it? So I split it up by doctor, exercise staff, and front office. I allocated how many hours per week you have to train on. I went through this whole ground zero process of where you just meet as a team and you map out your training and you commit to what days of the week you're going to allocate that time. In the next 12 weeks coming, you set a launch date and you stick to it. And the cool thing is we have a lot of doctors who are following this process. They post up their success. So, hey, I'm in week 4, I'm in week 6. And then we have events out in Idaho as well called the Impact Event. And our next one's February 21 and 22. And then we have chiropractors fly out. We encourage them to bring their staff with them because seeing is believing. You see it in person. And so all the stuff you've studied, now you see it, you visualize it, you extrapolate how you're going to do that in your clinic, and you duplicate the processes that work. And it takes some front end time. It does. But all the heavy lifting is done for you. The hard part in all of this was figuring out the systems, developing the systems, making the spreadsheets, having a father like this who would stay up till 2 a.m. I mean, for years. I mean, this isn't just like for a couple of months. This is years of work. And I think a lot of people who followed our stuff think it's all me. It's not all me. A lot of it was help from my dad. So I can't take all the credit for it. I mean, I did a lot of those late nights and lots of work as well. But the reason that we were able to get probably a decade of work done over the course of the last couple of years was because I think your work ethic is probably unparalleled and my work ethic is unparalleled. We have a similar work ethic and we're a little, I think, fanatical when we start working on something. We just get it done. I definitely got that attribute from my dad, so thanks for that one. Okay, all right, and that's how all this stuff was built, and that's why it's here. So I better close this out. This could be like a 3-hour interview, which is okay if you listen to the Jocko podcast. They have 3-hour interviews all the time, and so maybe we should just start doing 3-hour podcasts from now on. That's a lot of time. All right, so this is probably our longest Facebook Live we've done, one of the longest podcasts that's going to be inside of the Move Now Chiropractor, but hope you enjoyed it. We're doing this on Christmas Day, 4th fourth night of Hanukkah.
Happy Hanukkah to everybody, and Merry Christmas.
There you go.
And we wish you all a very healthy, happy, and prosperous new year.
That's right, especially healthy, many years to come. So with that said, check out our demo if you haven't yet, demo.movenowyou.com. You can see all the behind the stuff program, like videos and systems inside of our doctor training and staff training program. So check out that link. It'll take you to it. You can watch it. Thanks for all of your help in the past.
You're welcome.
Thanks for making me. Okay. Thanks for life. Appreciate it. Thanks for all of your mentoring, and go and give your dad, if you're lucky enough to still have a father, go give him a big hug and a kiss and tell him you love him. All right? I love you. All right. Over and out.